Okay. So I just want to thank everybody for being a part of the conversation we've had with Pastor Jackson and a few other clergy. We had a conversation a couple of weeks ago on just these issues about dialoguing on racism and how did we get here. And we've had some other things happen along the way. And so I have some other guests with me today as well. So I would just like to take the opportunity to have you all introduce yourselves, if you wouldn't mind, and just a little bit about yourselves. But all of us are local to Daphne and the Mobile area, and so just to have a chance to introduce yourselves, who I'm going to be asking questions. So, Pastor Jackson, if you would start and just introduce yourself real briefly.
Sure. Thank you very much, Daniel. And thank each one of the ones that's on. My name is Charles Jackson. My friends know me by my middle name, which is short for, which is Drew. And I currently serve as pastor of Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church in Daphne, Alabama. Been there for about 12 years. And as I shared to you before, grew up in a single family household with just my mother and my sister. And in one of the hardest areas that's quote unquote now in Pritchard, Alabama, and just graduate of University of Alabama. Thank God for that. And just glad to be on and see what I can input to help us on this journey.
Yeah, so appreciate it. And then Clyde, if you'd introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Clyde Jones. I'm one of the associate ministers at Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church in Daphne. I've been here in this area for 7 years. I'm originally from Virginia. Served 21 years in the military, so we moved around a lot. I'm also a member of the Commission on Social Justice and Racial Reconciliation of the Episcopal Church. So my wife and I are the only non-Episcopals on that commission right now, which is very interesting. So
yeah, I bet that is.
Yeah, it is very interesting. So I'm definitely excited about having this conversation this evening and looking forward to talk.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. And then Rick, this is the first time I've got to meet you. So if you just introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Rick Yeldon. I was born and raised here in Daphne.
Okay.
I spent 25 years with the Daphne Police Department.
Okay.
I retired about 2 years ago, and I'm just happy to be here and see what input I can put in.
Well, I greatly appreciate that. And then you retired as a lieutenant?
Yes.
Okay.
A lieutenant, yes, sir.
Wow, great. 25 years on the department?
25 years.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
That's fantastic. So I appreciate you being on the call. A lot of times we have, when it comes to all of these issues, we have too often not a dialogue. We have people on one side and we all talk, and then people on the other side and they all talk. So I appreciate Clyde, you helping me with bringing that conversation along. So I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely.
So tonight, I really want to work on a conversation about policing. Part of what's gone on in these last few incidents with, especially culminating in the murder of George Floyd a few weeks ago, has been a lot of things. And I was living in Minneapolis for 20 years, so some of those issues I know in those situations. But so then these things start to come up with phrases like defund the police and all of this. So from the issue of defund the police to even a little bit of controversy that we had even here in Daphne last week with some police officers that refused service at Five Guys Burgers, and that kind of blew up, at least in local media. And I saw it, I think, in USA Today as well, some reporting. But all of these issues on policing have really set us on edge as a nation. And and then so we have all of these things that get tossed around. So this is a tough conversation, and for me, being newer of all of us, yeah, Clyde being the next newest, but for me being new to the South, I can't think of a subject tougher to tackle unless it's Confederate monuments, which we'll spend another day talking about. But that's what I appreciate is raising those issues and having the ability to talk about them. So I know we have Michelle also on the call, and she's a part of Path to Peace, which is an organization with churches that are working with Black churches and white churches together in conversation. And so what we're going to do is spend about 45 minutes in this conversation. Then we'll cut the recording and then spend a little bit of time debriefing. And Michelle, if you have questions or comments to be able to jump in as well. From what I know of what I've read online or seen local news reports, like with what happened in Daphne, was just that situation of 2 or 3 police officers from Daphne Police had walked into 5 guys, at first realized they didn't have masks and they needed masks, went back out, waited, got masks on, came back in, but then were refused service by a few of the employees. And that's the basic of all that I know. But so part of that situation is just to get a feel for me being new to this city. What's been going on, or how have you heard about this situation, or just some things that strike you about that, especially in light of how are we doing locally when it comes to policing? So I can let any one of you start with that, or
Go ahead, Rick.
I'll yield for a minute.
Yeah, I think Rick gets it first.
Yeah. Well, I spent 25 years with Daphne, and we have a very good relationship with the community. So
yeah,
when I heard about that situation, I was a little set aside by it, because our police department work hard to work with the community, and we train our guys. While I was there, we train our guys well to understand that the community come first. So I was a little set aside by the fact that a local business would be willing to treat those guys in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are a service-oriented police department.
Mm-hmm.
And we as my time there, that was the thing that was preached to us, is to take care of your community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a bit of a shock, because these guys are just trying to get lunch.
Just trying to get lunch.
Right.
So
okay.
I mean, it was a sad day in Daphne for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because those guys work hard, and they're always trying to serve the community. So and I'm just happy that that's something that hasn't been going around in other businesses. I hate that it was that. I'm hoping that was just an isolated situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Pastor Jackson, any thoughts on what you've heard?
And that's the thing. I think it was it the 7th? The day that it happened? Was it?
Yeah, it was about a week ago. So the 7th sounds right. Yeah.
And it actually happened. I had Pastor Wayne Anderson and I had met with the chief and the captain that morning.
Oh my goodness, that's right.
Yeah, we had met with him both of them that morning,
mm-hmm.
to just start a dialogue. Once again, because Rick, that 5 years ago we hosted where the police came in, and for the youth and the adults to be the police officers and see what they go through and the challenges that they face, and having to make a decision on a split second,
mm-hmm.
whether to pull out their firearm or everything is going to be, okay. And so I didn't get very much information on the five guys other than
Right.
the news as far as what they were reporting. But the meeting that we had, I think went very well.
Good.
As far as getting not inside information, but getting information as far as the procedures that they have in place. Definitely when we talk, they no chokeholds. So they've got things in place already. And so I left out of the meeting pleased with what I heard.
Oh, that's
and
good.
Even the captain, what's his name, Rick?
Beatty.
Beatty? Yeah.
Captain Beatty.
Captain Beatty offered to set up an email dialogue as far as being able to keep in contact with us and us keeping in contact with them. So I think Daphne is kind of a different pocket that others should really model themselves after, being more community oriented as far as what I've seen. And this is just me speaking personally, with me living on one side, but then pastoring and working on the other side, that I want them to know me.
Right. Yeah.
When they see my face, they need to know who I am. And I think if more citizens try to do that along with the police department working with them, I think it'll cut down on a lot of what we've seen. And one of the questions that we did ask, do they go through diversity training? Because I think that's something that we discussed the last time we had this, and the answer was yes, they go through diversity training, that they're required to have, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, so many hours of training and diversity training.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, when you have that, then if you're pulling over a white person versus a black person, you should be able to tell the lingo, the different mannerism, the different behavior, and be able to adjust to that, and not thinking that it's automatically offensive towards you or that you're being disrespected in a manner. Yeah. So, but I always, as I tell both of the Rick and Reverend Jones, are members of Macedonia, so I always tell them, and they always know when we leave a meeting before we close, is what can we do better? Yeah. And I even shared that with the chief, because I think they kept using the word change. And I try not to use that word change, because people get tense when you talk about changing things.
Oh man.
But I always say, what can we do better? And as an illustration, I say nobody is walking. You find very few people walking around with a flip phone now, because they kept improving it and making it better. So I always think that we can always look to see what we can do better and can improve on. And that's, don't get in a sense that everything is good, we're good, and there's nothing we can do better. So we offered from Macedonia's point, as well as the citizens of Daphne, to work with them on an ongoing basis, and to just be out there in the community working with them and not against them.
Right. That's good. Clyde, any thoughts from that story, or?
No, my first thought was, I was really surprised that it took place. Kind of like Rick, I always felt like, since I've been here, that particularly the Daphne Police had a good relationship with the community, and I really hadn't seen anybody treat them that way in any businesses or anything. So I was a bit shocked, and I thought it had to be more to the story. But I mean, I guess it was pretty much straightforward. But I just was a bit shocked. And as Rick said earlier, I think it was isolated event, which was great.
Yeah.
And I think it was a lesson learned for everyone involved, actually. I mean, and hopefully, people learn from it and move forward, and know how to behave going forward.
Yeah. So with how things go locally, and I'm really glad I had remembered you and Pastor Jackson, you and Pastor Anderson had that meeting set up. So just experience for you all, and Rick, your experience in 25 years of serving in the Daphne Police Department. What's how has policing gone? Rick, is there any difference in 25 years of how policing has been done, or have things changed in any particular way in how Daphne Police serves the community?
Well, I think is basically it's the police department probably hadn't changed a whole lot as for, they have improved on things they need to improve on. And but as Daphne has grown, like I said, when I started 25 years ago and I was born and raised here, I mean, I've just seen a lot of change in the city.
Unbelievable
and of course when a city started to grow, you get a diverse group of people, and it's it's just no longer when I was coming up through the department, it was just a lot of locals,
right?
And as time has gone on, the city has grown quite a bit. But as far as policing, I mean, it's still no matter how the city grow, I mean, it's always community oriented policing. So you just try to improve on that. And
right.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's just about respecting each other,
right?
And just treating people like you want to be treated. I mean, even as an officer, you still need to treat a person as if you wanted to be treated by somebody. So I think long as we departments keep doing that, we're gonna be fine. Long as you just treat people with respect.
Rick, could you go a little bit more into the philosophy of community policing? What does that mean for Daphne Police Department?
Well, what it means is, as I see it, it means you're getting out, you're getting involved with the community. It's not about it's not all the time about the enforcement.
Right.
You have to get involved in things. I mean, like simple things like stopping at the baseball park, for instance. That's just one of the things. I mean, you got all the little kids out there playing baseball. You get out, you walk around, and you talk with the kids, and so you want them to be able to understand that we're human, and we can be approached, and so those are just some of the things. Just being involved with the community, and just letting them know that they do have the ability to come up to you and talk to you, and you just a guy just like them, or a lady, just like them, and we got families, we got kids that participate in community activities, and so that's just just being involved in the community.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. Clyde or Pastor Jackson, what's been the experience you've seen on how policing is going, or in their approach, and then how we see as a community the police department?
As far as Daphne, they've been there for us, and when I say us, I mean the Macedonia family. Funerals, whatever we're in need of, they're there, and it's more of us continuing to build a relationship with us. And I think if more citizens, churches, businesses reached out to try to do the same, I think it lessens the tension.
Yeah.
And it helps with it being a community police officers, where you actually know who it is you're going to see. And I think when we met with them, I did ask the question as far as the minorities that were on the police force, Rick and Dan and Clyde. I did ask that question, and it is low. They could almost name all of them just like that. Yeah. But the problem there was, per the captain and the chief, was the applicants. And so I told them that we would be more than willing, just like we're doing with the school department, Clyde, to work with them to get them some qualified applicants when the time comes. So it will be more of a balance as far as the minority. I'm just going to say minority because
hires.
whether they're African American or not, as long as they're a minority, because there's more of a diverse group of people living in Daphne now. So
That's
it's just
true.
not Black, it's,
Mhm.
Hispanics or and whomever else that may be coming to that area. So you need to have that as much as possible, that diversity that's represented on the police department as well as in the school system. So that's where we were, but they've been good to for me and for us as a church family, and they actually mentioned Clyde and Rick when we was going to feed them again. So I told them as soon as things kind of settle down, we'll try to get a group in to feed them, because we do that once a year. We feed the police department as well as the fire department once a year.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You take them a
to
meal?
show our appreciation. Yeah.
Oh, that's outstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, after the incident at Five Guys, there are so many offers. I don't think a police officer is going to have to buy lunch for like a year, in this town. I mean, people were stuffing up.
Yeah.
So, Clyde, any thoughts on how you've seen policing so far in our area?
Well, I mean, like everyone has said, I've seen a lot of community involvement. I mean, we had detective come to the church just before all this COVID stuff came about to talk about security and kind of talk to the church and run through a drill with us and everything. So I think there's a good relationship. Pastor mentioned a program we had about 5 years ago, and I didn't even realize it's been that long ago, where we had FBI agents, local police. We had everybody come to the church, and we had them interact with the youth and kind of change roles, and so they can understand how that all works. So so I think we have a very, very good relationship. Going back to the minority police officers, I mean, just like in the school system, there has to be more done than just sitting there waiting on an applicant to come. There has to be some recruitment. There has to be a trip up to HBCU, or there has to be some improvement in those things, just like with our school system. So we can't just sit back in Baldwin County and just wait on minority applicants to come up. But we have to, if we truly want a diverse school system, law, police departments, if we really, really want that, we have to put some effort into those things. So those are some things that we have to work on, I think. And Rick, you probably can talk a little bit about this. How is Daphne pay scale in comparison to other local police departments?
Good question.
Well, most of the departments in Baldwin County are, pretty close in pay, and they, the pay is pretty good.
Okay.
So I think we do draw quite a few applicants, even people from out of town, simply because the pay is good. The city has really good insurance, and and the department has good equipment, and everybody want to work at a place that they have the things that they need to do their job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. How big is the police force in Daphne?
Well, that's kind of hard to say because it's growing so fast.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to say it's probably around between 55 to 60.
Okay.
Total.
You're pretty good, Rick.
Yeah.
Your memory's pretty good. I think I was told 59.
All right. Yeah.
So yeah, I just know that when I and I often go back and visit the police department, and I've been gone 2 years, and just to give you an idea of how things are changing, and I think I was told since I left, this has been about 20 some new officers.
Yeah.
Because we had quite a few people retire in the same time that I did. So I think they say at this point it's about 20 some new officers that's been brought on to the police department. So it's a lot of us guys came on around the same time 25 years ago. That's when the city was growing and the department was growing, and so a lot of us getting to that time of retirement. So there will be in the next few years some more turnover, people retiring. So, but we still have good people at the top. So,
Well, that's good.
yeah,
And that's where it's got to start.
yeah,
You've got to have good leadership.
yes, sir.
That's the key. So it sounds like one of the major differences in a police department that, in this area is the desire to be more proactive than reactive. Am I
Yes, sir.
gauging that right?
Yeah. I mean, we want to be proactive.
Yeah.
Proactive is always better than reactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting out, like you said, for people to see who you are, that you're showing up for just community things. You're showing up.
Yes.
If Macedonia Baptist Church asks to have something at their church for training to help their congregation, you guys are there.
Yeah.
Show up at ball games just to do things. Do they do anything with having officers get involved in volunteering or anything?
Yeah. I know one of the things that I think the officers do is the Night to Shine. I don't know if you're familiar with the Night to Shine. It's the Tim Tebow where they have the adults, I'm trying to the adults. I'm not sure what Down syndrome and those type people.
Special needs kids. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's my
Uh-huh.
word. Special needs, and some are kids, some are adults. So we have some
Okay.
guys volunteer for that, and
That's fantastic.
so yeah, so we are very. I know during my time there, we were very involved in things going on in the community.
Good.
Whatever if somebody called and they needed an officer to come and talk to kids or whatever it is, we was always willing to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I where we moved from, of course, we lived in Minneapolis for 20 years, and the church where I pastored was just outside of Minneapolis, and that town was Columbia Heights, and I mean, there are huge differences. The Columbia Heights Police Department was very much, it sounds like a lot like Daphne Police, very proactive. The chief that came in, I knew there were 3 chiefs there while I was there, and the chief that was there the longest, he made sure they were incredibly proactive, and then the other thing, in Pastor Jackson and Clyde, to your point on hiring, he himself was highly active in recruiting minority police officers. He was rigorous in his hiring process. He told me, he said, I'm not hiring anybody coming from Minneapolis Police Department. We don't hire them. They're trained wrong, and he said, so it takes longer to hire. But the other thing is that our community was incredibly diverse ethnically. And so he himself actively recruited. We had a good population of Somalis and Ethiopians. And so he actively sought out helping young men and women want to get into law enforcement from those communities, and then worked to hire them. And he said it takes a lot longer, but the thing is he got involved. He didn't wait for an application to come across his desk. They would if I happened to mention to him or another officer or one of their leaders of anybody that was interested in law enforcement, they said, could you please pass our name along to them and give us their name? We want to get involved with them. High school kids, didn't matter. It's that active participation of saying, we want you to be a part of that. And then the other thing that they did was the chief there was a big supporter of Big Brothers and Big Sisters. So he brought a school program into the community. And so he had police officers and fire department, and then people from the city that would sign up and volunteer, and they would go visit a kid for an hour a week in the schools. And just a tremendous program. And but it was part of that being proactive rather than reactive. And I think some of that gets into how people see certain things in certain areas. And why there might be, if you're looking just at the news and you see how Minneapolis does it, or Chicago does it, or New York City does it. Do you think that's a tendency to say that's how all police are, or that's how they all train, or that's how they all see us, or what do you think?
As for seeing other police,
Yeah. Are people
on the news?
drawing conclusions just looking at a bigger police department?
I think so. I think that when people see things that's happening at bigger police departments, sometimes they think that's just the way it happened in all police departments, and that's definitely not true.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Rick. I think that's what happens in judging a entire police force on the basis of one bad police officer is just like judging all the protesters on one guy looting, right? You don't group them all together. So we have to be careful of that, and that's what happens. That's what happens. A lot of times we see that in young people. A lot of young people are raised that way. I mean, I hate to say it, but parents they raise them not to trust law enforcement. And that's where that community involvement comes into play. When you're involved in community and you get them at a young age, and they can see, hey, they're just like us. We can trust them. But when you're raised in an area where you're taught not to trust them automatically. I mean, no matter who they are, what they, just as soon as you see the uniform, you don't trust them. You view them in the same way. I think that's where a lot of the problems come from. With a lot of the interactions that we have between the citizens and law enforcement.
Yeah.
Hey, Rick, let me ask you a question. And I know I'm supposed to be on answering questions.
That's good. Go ahead. You guys take over.
What's the age, Rick? Is it 21 or 22?
21.
21?
Yeah.
21. Because what it just triggered my mind, I think, I don't know who said something about the being active in the school, and I think are they in all the schools, Rick, or just the high school? All of them?
Now, I want to say that I know in Baldwin County, we got an officer now in every school.
That's what I thought I was told. Yeah.
Like community service officers or
resource officers.
Resource officers, right? Okay.
So to kind of go to something Clyde said, that has been a really good program because these kids get a chance to be around an officer all day.
Okay.
While they in school. So I mean that in itself helped them, to learn the officer, trust the officers. So that helps by having the school resource officers in the school. You catch them at an early age. And sometimes you can, even though like Clyde said, sometimes the parents, they don't like the police, so they teach the kids not to like the police. But kids got a way of when they meet an officer and they around that officer every day, they begin to trust in that officer, and they excited to see him. I want to tell you a little quick story. One of the guys that he retired right before me, but we looked similar.
Okay.
We were similar in stature, and it was always funny because the young kids, they couldn't really tell us apart. So a lot of times I would just be out in uniform working, and some little kid would just run up to me and start hugging me. And I knew that, and he worked in the schools. So I knew that they actually thought that I was him. And I never tried to tell them any different. I just hugged them, and, like so that was that's just an example of how kids, if they not taught to hate police officers, they love them.
Yeah.
That's just kind of funny, but they would always come up to me and I would always know that, they thought I was the resource officer from school. And I would just hug them and love them and, talk to them and, try to make them feel like, I can always go up and talk to that guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Pastor Jackson, when you were growing up, what was the attitude that your family taught you or was in the neighborhood? It was a tougher part of Mobile. And what was the attitude toward the police?
Rick, you used to spend some time over there too, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
His grandmother lived over there in that area.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. You tried to as best keep your nose clean, you stay out of the way, and we knew, and I knew at an early age the do's and don'ts when you come in contact with an officer. If you're pulled over, no sudden movements. You do exactly what you're told to do. And it's strange that I had a friend. He's deceased now, and he was like 6'4", ended up going to Auburn, 280, 290 pounds, and when he's pulled over by the police, it's hands don't move. Here I am. Tell me step by step as far as what you want me to do. Because if you don't, even now, the police officer can't see and don't know that you may be reaching for a cell phone.
Yeah. And
so everything is, and I tell my sons the same thing. Hey, no sudden movements. Even I told you before, I was pulled over here in Saraland, and I'm talking to the officer the whole time. Do you need, make sure do you need to see my insurance? Do you need to see my registration? I'm moving. I'm not making any fast movements and talking to them, waiting for their next command as far as what they want me to do. And because so many lives have been, and sometimes lives been lost, even following those instructions.
Right. Yeah.
Even doing what you're supposed to do. And that goes where I don't know whether the officers hadn't been trained properly, whether they see a threat when they're pulling the people, an African American over, or if it's just pure hatred on the inside of that officer.
Yeah.
So it's just so much that goes into it, and just thank God now that we have video cameras on our phone. How many arrests wouldn't have taken place?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't be where we are now 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
It would have just been my word against your word, or whoever the witnesses are. Then the witnesses may have been afraid to say, yeah, this is what happened. And then you got, once again, an officer's word over a citizen's word.
Yeah. It's I think sometimes different areas, mentalities and police departments and how leadership trains them is the big difference. So you hear that phrase, defund the police. How does that come across to you guys?
I think, automatically when you hear defund the police, it has a negative connotation to it. But when you hear that, but you have to really look into it and see what they were talking about. I did a little reading, and some of the things that they're talking about when they talk about defund is not necessarily defunding, but redirecting funds. Like police officers right now, there's so many, especially in the state of Alabama. We closed all the mental health hospitals, right? So we get 40% of the inmates in our jails or prisons are there because they have mental illness. Really, it's not. And police officers, when they're making arrests, they're not equipped to handle to deal with those type of issues, right? They're not trained to deal with those, and they're not necessarily supposed to be trained So they're talking about redirecting funds
Mm-hmm.
from maybe not so many police officers, but maybe the police department hiring 2 social workers or
Mm-hmm.
hiring somebody else that can help with those situations and de-escalate situations and just talk to folks and maybe answer calls that are not of a violent or criminal type nature, but again, vagrancy or
Mm-hmm.
some mental illness or somebody that's homeless or whatever, and dealing with that, dealing with
Have
those things.
different people or different agencies handle those types of
Right,
situations.
those things, and that's what a lot of that is referring to. Again, when you hear defund, you think about we're just taking money away, but also on the other side of that is we have some police forces that spend I don't know, thousands and tens of thousands of dollars on armament. I mean,
Right.
like they're going to Fallujah or something, right? I mean,
Right.
so all the police departments don't need all of that. They're not, they're not in Beirut or So taking some of that
Mm-hmm.
and maybe investing in more training or diversity training.
Right.
Or I read somewhere not long ago that we most police departments in the United States, most people, they have to spend more hours in barber school learning how to cut hair than they do learning how to be a police officer. So that should tell you a little something about how much time and money we're spending in training. So they're not necessarily talking about just outright taking money away from the police departments, but redirecting it to agencies that will help the police departments do their job better.
Right.
And to better, even like the programs like we have, like school resource officers or whatever, redirecting more money toward those type things to keep this school to prison pipeline down, and to reduce our numbers. And people automatically again go to, we need the police. We absolutely need. We can't have a lawless area, right? We can't have just but we can also use our resources and our funds to assist and aid those police departments to do their job better by having these other agencies.
Yeah. It's making sure that the police get to do a particular job and not every job.
Right.
So that we're not calling them for absolutely everything.
And right now that's what pretty much what's happening, because we have the other agencies don't exist. So
exactly.
So they're asked to do all these other jobs. So so if you think about it that way, it doesn't automatically go to a negative. To me, it doesn't automatically go to a negative when we talk about defunding. It's not necessarily defunding, but it's kind of rerouting some of the funding to do other things. That's my take on that. So.
I appreciate that. Pastor Jackson, any thoughts on that phrase, defund the police?
I think Clyde did an excellent job.
Yeah. Rick, as a police officer, how do you hear that?
Yeah, I'm glad that I was thinking about that when I was reading the email, defunding, and I'm kind of like Clyde. That sounds like negative. A negative thing. So I mean, I wish that term would have been maybe reallocation or something.
Sure. Yeah. How can you get a grasp on it? Right.
Yeah. Because I mean, defunding sound like, to me, like Clyde was saying, that defunding sound like, I'm going to take away money from the police department. So in my mind, if I was thinking defunding, you're taking away resources for all the good officers because of the action of a few bad officers. So I would like, I would think the term reallocating would be a much better term.
Right.
Reallocating resources to, like Clyde said, but as I really think while I was in law enforcement, I think Baldwin County as a whole did a really good job of trying to train people in all aspects. And officers got a tough job because we go to all kind of calls. So
that's right. Yeah.
You got to be a lawyer.
A marriage counselor.
You got to be a marriage counselor. You got to be, sometimes you got to, it's a tough job because you go to college and you got to do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you even got to do parenting.
Yeah.
You go and, parent having a problem with a kid. You got to sit down and talk to them,
Yeah.
They have, officers have a tough job. So, that term defunding, unless you do the research like Clyde did, I'm sure most officers, when they have defunding, it's like you want to take away our resources to do our job.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I think it's together as a community we have to look at what do we want to give our priorities to make things work better. And part of it in reality is that we as citizens, sometimes we're just too quick to call, and I've got, kids that live still in Minneapolis, and one of the things that they've determined in their own lives is if there's too much noise going on at night, sometimes it's just a matter of, okay, I have to find it within myself to not be afraid. And maybe I just need to go out there and talk to my neighbor and just get to know them and say, could you turn it down a little bit? And just get to know each other just a little bit more rather than our first reaction be call the police.
Right.
And so we all could do better by just being a little bit more proactive in our own lives at times,
Exactly.
Just by saying, hey, I just need to get to know you. I had one, I think it was the first police chief that was there when I started at the church in Columbia Heights. I think it was his experience. We have in Columbia Heights, they have this tremendous diversity of nationalities as well. And so he had a neighbor from West Africa, and he happened to realize that whenever he got out to mow his lawn, his neighbor the next day he'd mow his lawn, and he began to realize this guy's mirroring what I do. And so he went over to his neighbor and he said, hey, if you need to borrow anything, my garage is pretty much, if you see something you need, if you just want to borrow it for a little bit and put it back, that's fine with me. And the neighbor said, oh, thank you. He said, because where I come from, everything is sand. I don't know how to grow grass, and it was just the police chief modeling, saying, I need to go talk to this guy. I need to get to know him. And just that act of friendship opened up this door, and it helped the police chief realize, how would he know how to grow grass?
Right.
He hadn't been around it. And sometimes just talking to our neighbors, we begin to find things out that help solve issues that we don't need to call 911 for every time. And so we can all do a little bit better, it seems. So
Very good.
any other thoughts on policing or the issues that have come up just personally or just things that we're dealing with?
I think one thing that I learned, Dan, and it came from the training session that when we brought in, I think it was Detective Jackson, brought him in to go over everything at Macedonia for the security of Macedonia. If somebody came in and there was an active shooter, how to do it, how we needed to take care of it. And one thing that he shared with us, even if somebody in the congregation has a weapon and he end up having to shoot the shooter, that weapon needs to be out of their hands when the police arrive. Because when they arrive, they don't know exactly. They don't know who the shooter is. So if they see you standing there with a gun, automatically in their mind they think you could be the shooter, and you one of the parishioners that they end up killing, then you end up getting. So that was something that really caught my attention and really made me think. And I'm glad that he was able to share that with the congregation. And prayerfully we never have to be in that situation, but at least now we know.
Mm-hmm.
The question that I asked earlier, Rick, was because if it's something Clyde and you and I probably can get together and work on it. If they're in need of minority, I think it's hires as far as police officers, and I think they are. We can work with them, and I think it'll be a good start. That's the reason I asked about the age. Why not start in the high schools?
Yeah, get them interested.
Yeah, get them interested in it earlier, and so now they don't have to. Everybody's not equipped to go off to college or military or wherever, but at least that'll be a good starting point. If some of them were interested, you're there with them, get them interested, or find out if they would be interested via the fire department, police, civil service, whatever it may be. I think it'll be a good starting point there, or even earlier. Middle school, and so to see where they are. At least they've been there throughout, and you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, just to wrap us up here, I think one of the things that does help is to be in conversation like we're doing tonight. Yeah. And Pastor Jackson, like you and Pastor Anderson did, going to talk to the police chief and just begin to open up dialogue. And as your church has modeled, have them in. So if there are issues, they could be at the forefront of helping you deal with those issues. And then Rick, like you said, with having officers that are out there at ball games and in parks and things, and just talk to the kids, and be that resource officer in the schools that's not there to be a heavy hand, but just to get kids to not be frightened,
Right.
And part of that is we just moving together as a community just can make that difference for us.
Yes.
But then to find those ways that we can get those resources into those other areas like mental health and domestic violence and those kinds of things, where we can bring those resources to bear too, that takes a lot of weight off of some police officers so they can be more concentrated when they roll up on a call.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work for us. And I think that's what I appreciate about this conversation is sometimes we can get the temperature up too high and not hear each other. So I appreciate you all having the conversation just to have it in a better tone. So any closing thoughts before we wrap up here? I know if Michelle has some things I want to jump on after the end of the recording. So
I'm fine. Just thank you for the opportunity. Right. Hopefully it's helped somebody. And
I'm hoping this helps.
Yeah.
Well,
you.
Rick, again, thank you for being a part of this.
All right.
And Pastor Jackson and Clyde, again, just your help and the way you model that in the community for us through your church is just a tremendous example for us. So thank you so much.